Good morning from Big Sky Country. I'm Stacy, owner of Montana Used Bricks. And today I thought I'd do something a little bit different. I belong to the Facebook group Bricklink Worldwide Buyers and Sellers. And on this, people can post questions about their Bricklink store, or as a buyer, they can ask stores if they have certain parts or ask questions about sets. And it's kind of like the forums on Bricklink, just a little bit more open. But there's a lot of good questions that come up on this Facebook page. So today I thought I would go over a couple that I saw this past week, and I would answer them as a Bricklink seller, and depending on the question, maybe as a buyer. And just to give you some food for thought, because these are things that may or may not come up in your store, but just things to think about. The first question has to do with light gray and light bluish gray. And I'm going to read the post to you. I'd like to take a moment to thank the Lego gods for the different shades of gray. My eyes hurt from trying to sort light gray and light bluish gray. It's much easier telling them apart when they are together, but then even things start to look the same after a while. It's hard telling if it's just faded or not light bluish gray. I haven't been fast at loading up my light gray items, so I am curious for people that do, does it sell much? I have some, and I think I'd like 1 or 2 orders with a piece or two. First, I want to comment on the first part of that about telling them apart. I had the same issue when I started, and the one thing that I noticed that helped tremendously was getting LED lights. When we had our shop in our house, both my husband and I had lamps that had the LED light, and when you put those two under LED lights, the light bluish gray and the light gray, you can tell them apart right away. So when we put our shop together, I definitely made sure that I had LED lights when the lights were installed. The second part of that, do they sell? Light gray sells a lot in my store. I don't know about other stores, but I think a lot of people are trying to recreate the older space sets, and they need those light gray, or even the older Star Wars set, because like I said before, my whole reason for getting into this was to build some of my son's Star Wars sets that he had from like 1998. As I was building it, I didn't know much about Lego, so I was very confused as 2 different gray parts. But after a while, I started to figure out, oh, there's an older one and a newer one, and I was able to start telling them apart. The other thing we did is we kind of created a template. We used a couple of larger light gray and light bluish gray parts, and we put them together, and then whenever we'd come across the part, we could compare to see, oh yeah, this is light bluish gray. So that's something else that you could do. But as for if they sell, yes, the answer is definitely yes. As a used seller, a lot of mine are older parts, so of course they're gonna sell. Okay, the next one is kind of a long one, but I'll kind of give a synopsis of it. Basically, the buyer made a mistake. He listed the wrong Star Wars set because it was an AT-AT set, and there's several of them out there, and he listed the wrong one. As he was double checking the order after it was sold, he realized he had the wrong one. So he said that I immediately have reached out to the buyer to explain and offered either a full or partial refund on the order, which also includes some parts, along with an offer of a coupon, whatever they decide to do. I have also reviewed all of my listed sets to ensure I haven't made the same mistake anywhere else. Is there anything here that I could have or should have done more apart from paying more attention? And I think what he did was absolutely right. He communicated with the buyer as soon as he saw the mistake. He gave them an offer of either a full refund or a partial refund, which, if you're giving a full refund, you're basically canceling the order. Because I noticed in the comments, people are like, oh, you should have offered to cancel the order. I think if you're offering a full refund, I think you're basically canceling the order. Really, I don't think there's any more he could have done. That's exactly what I would have done, is I would have offered to cancel the order. I haven't made that big of a mistake, but I have made several pretty big mistakes where I had parts listed incorrectly, and I immediately contacted them, and usually at that point I'll say, do you want me to refund for that part and ship the rest of the parts, or do you want to cancel the order? because a lot of times if you have that one high-priced item in a small order, it's pretty obvious that they came to your store for that one part. When that has happened to me, I think there's only been one time where the person said, yeah, go ahead and cancel the order because that was the part I wanted. So I've been very lucky that even though I have made the mistake, that the buyer did not leave me a negative feedback because I didn't have that part. A lot of buyers understand how complicated Lego is and how many parts are out there, how many variations, how many colors. It's often easy to confuse colors, especially when you're doing a lot of sorting and putting a lot of parts into inventory. And generally people are pretty understanding. You can usually tell the people that are somewhat new or just don't have a very good tolerance for people who aren't perfect. So I would say what he did is absolutely correct. I would be interested if there's any other sellers out there, how they would have handled the situation if they would have done something different. So for the next one, do you send a second reminder invoice or just go straight to non-buyer case? Per store terms, this was due June 12th. He wrote this on the 15th, so 3 days. So in my store terms, I ask for payment to be made right away. I do say that if after 4 days I haven't heard from the buyer, I will send a second reminder. So I'm really big on the second reminder because sometimes people get busy, they forget, or it's one of those things it's like, oh yeah, I gotta pay for that, and then they have something come up in their life. And when I send the second reminder, I always send a message through Bricklink, but then I also send a message to their email account. This is because I found out early on, not everybody has the email notifications set up on their Bricklink. So if they get a message, they're not getting an email saying, oh, you have a message. So it is a little bit of a overkill in some cases where people do have that set up, but at the same time, it saves the misunderstanding later where they go, oh, I didn't get that message, because you can say, well, I sent it to both your Bricklink and your email. So it kind of clears up that confusion a little bit. As for this question, yes, I always send a second reminder saying, please pay for this. If they haven't paid after the full 7 days, then I will start the non-paying buyer. Which I have to say, since instant checkout, I've had probably one, if not any, since we started the instant checkout. So I am grateful for instant checkout for that reason. This was kind of a really good thought-provoking question, and I think I've probably answered this in all my former YouTube videos, but the question is, if you could go back to when you first opened your store, what is something you would do differently? So there's several things on here I would do differently. I would start using remarks right off the bat because I spent a lot of time searching for parts because I was doing everything from memory until I had quite a few parts in my store. The other thing I would do is I would have pulled out all the bad parts. I cringed to think what I sold when I first started because I didn't know what I was doing and I didn't understand that people are looking for new condition used parts. So I know that I sold parts I probably shouldn't have. I know that now, and I apologize to any of those early buyers. But now I'm very particular about the parts that go into my store. I'm continually pulling parts out even as I'm doing spot checks. So I try to have a lot higher quality used parts. Also at the time I didn't have a lot of parts to be choosy. So I was pretty much putting anything into my store. Trying to think if there was anything else. I think those are the two big things. Putting in better quality used parts and using the remarks right off the bat. Those are the two things I would do differently if I was to start over. That in my very first order, I would have paid a little bit more attention to how the pricing works because I really undersold a lot of parts on my very first order until I realized what I had done. So I guess there's three things: learn the pricing, remarks, and better quality. Okay, this next question is a hot topic, and I have seen this come up countless times in the forums, and I was not surprised to see that there was like 115 comments on this one post, which usually there sometimes are 50 or 60. Not very many times you'll get over 100 comments on the same post. And this has to do with shipping new parts. I just received an order I'm not happy with, and before I decide what to do, I thought I'll ask what you think. The parts were destined for my store inventory. Is it acceptable to sell connected stacked parts as new? I would never do that in my store, second biggest in the UK, but maybe I'm too picky. Let's settle it for good. Yeah. With new parts, you do not want to connect them in any way, shape, or form. If they happen to connect in transit, that's one thing, but you don't want to purposely stack new parts. And thankfully, I learned this before I started selling new parts. With my used parts, yes, I do stack them, sometimes for storage, which I know you're not supposed to do, or some people think you shouldn't do. But I definitely do it for shipping, especially when they're getting a lot of parts. I make it very easy to count because I'll put bricks in stacks of 10 and I'll put plates in stacks of 20, which makes them really easy to count. With the plates, I do stagger them, like in the picture here. That way they're easier to get apart. I have been doing that for years. I've only ever had one complaint, and I can tell you right now that I should have thought about that before I did it, and that's with the reddish brown parts. Reddish brown parts are notorious for being brittle and breaking, and so when he was taking them apart, several of them got broke. So probably with the reddish brown parts, I would definitely be more careful and make better decisions on whether or not those would be stacked. But as for new parts, no. Never stack new parts. There was some comments about something else she said in here that kind of became a hot topic as well. And that was that she said that the new parts were destined to be part of her store inventory. There became a secondary discussion on her post because of this. Not so much that she was buying from Bricklink sellers and then reselling in her store. There's quite a few stores that do that. That's not unusual, especially if stores are going out of business, have stuff for 50% off, just have a really good deal. They'll go out and buy them, and that's fine. I don't have an issue with that because as long as you're buying from my store, I don't care what you do with it after you get it. I don't want to say, I can't say that. I would be really upset if I found out you were just getting it and using it to blow it up or something. If you want to buy from my store to sell in your store because I haven't checked my prices and those couple of parts have gone up, fine. That's my fault. Go ahead, resell it. The question was, if she is buying these and then reselling them, are they still new? My answer is if she has not stacked them and she has stored them carefully, that there's no reason why she shouldn't be allowed to sell them as new because she hasn't used them. They haven't been used. Yes, they are now second, third hand at that point, but they haven't been used. So I don't have an issue with that, but I can see why some people would because you really don't know where those parts have been at that point. Which kind of got me to thinking, this whole food for thought. This one of the reasons I did this video was when I buy bulk lots, occasionally there will be a pack of sealed Lego, like, bag 1 or bag 4 from a set, and those have not been opened. Now, I bought these used, secondhand, but at the same time, these are sealed and not open. I'm considering them new. I would be curious what you think. If I bought them used, even they're sealed, they're in the bag, I know they're new because they've never been outside the bag. Are they still new or are they used because I bought them secondhand? So I would be curious what you think of that one. Okay, the next question is, those who own large Bricklink stores, any advice on how to scale up? I've been on a steady growth path for the past year and I'm happy with my progress, but always welcome advice from experts. I do not have a large link store. I have maybe a small to medium sized store, but I do fairly well. If I was going to scale up, there are several things I would do. One is I would probably hire somebody to come in and help me get parts into inventory because obviously that's the first step to scaling up is you need the parts to get them into inventory. I obviously have the parts, see some of my other videos, to put into inventory. I just don't have the time to do it right now. The other thing I would do is I would have to relook at my storage space, because when you're scaling up, you're going to need a lot of space for those parts. And anybody who has been doing this for any length of time knows that once you get them sorted, it takes a lot of space. When they're in one little container, not much space, but once you sort them out, it takes up a lot of space. So you really need to start looking at, do I have the space to scale up? Am I going to need to add more shelves? Am I going to need to move to another room of the house? Am I going to need to build a shop? Am I going to need to rent a space? There are Bricklink stores that are big enough that they rent a space. So those are some things you're going to have to keep in mind. The other thing is the time and money. Is Bricklink your full-time job? You know, if not, how much time do you have to devote to it to scale up? And the money aspect, do you have the money to invest to scale up? Because you're still going to have to buy more inventory in order to get more inventory into your store. And you're also going to have to buy more organizers to keep everything organized in your store so you can find stuff. Some of the other suggestions that I also watched a video this past week. It's called the Brick Separators. It's on YouTube. And they talk about Pop's Shop. Okay, hopefully that's right. If it's not, I'll put a correction right here. That he was able to quit his job and work full-time on Lego. And I was very curious on how he did that. Well, he has a specialized niche. He mainly focuses on minifigures and minifigure accessories, but he also sells on Bricklink, Brickowl, eBay, and I believe he said he goes to events. So he has a lot of places where he's selling those. I right now have a hard enough time keeping up with Bricklink. I am hoping that by the time I retire, I can get on to Brickowl, and I have some other ideas that are Lego related but not inventory related that I'm going to pursue hopefully in the next couple of years. And so for me, I'm not really looking at being the biggest, bestest store right now. I'm looking at, can I make enough of a profit to keep going and enough of a profit to buy the stuff that I want is where I'm at right now. Would I like to be doing this full time? Yes. But my fear is if I attempt to do that, if I was able to find enough outlets to sell the parts and to be able to quit my job, this becomes a job. And will I still enjoy doing it? Because I don't know if I'm spending 8 to 10 hours a day doing this. I might enjoy it more than the job I have now, but would it zap all the fun out of having Lego? So those are just some things to think about if you're interested in scaling up. Those are my thoughts. As always, I'd be curious what your thoughts are on that. This next one I haven't done, but I thought was very interesting. Anyone ever track their sales versus average inventory value? I just noticed I'm right at my average inventory in sales over the past 6 months. Seems like a fast turnover to me, but curious to what others see. And a lot of people have said that they do this. I haven't done this, and I'm a little curious as to how they do it. I might have to look at some YouTube videos by some other sellers that put their expenses out there. I think in one way I have done this is the fact that I bought a massive amount of Lego at one time, and I was very curious how much profit I would make off of those Lego. And so I did keep track when I was putting parts into inventory. I kept track of what I was going to be selling it for on Bricklink versus my cost, and it did not take long for me to see that I was going to make a huge profit if I sold those parts. And we have sold most of the unique parts that I've gotten out of that massive haul, and I'm going to do a video on that because it was huge. It was the biggest amount I've ever spent on Lego, and I still have 2.5 containers that I'm sorting through from that, just from that haul, and that was 2 years ago. It was July of 2019. So I kind of did that sales versus average inventory value. And I kind of keep track of that, but not in the way that they're talking about. And I was really surprised. A lot of stores said, yeah, I track that, and my turnover is this or my turnover is that. And I never thought to do that. So that might be something that I'll start doing once I figure out exactly how they're keeping track, what numbers they're pulling to look at that. Okay, so this one I did a whole video on, so everybody knows my answer to this one. I'm going to try reading this, but I'm not sure that English is the seller's first language. Has anyone else's store gone from 5 to 7 a day, I'm thinking he means orders, to not had order for 5 days? The longest I've ever gone before without an order is 2 days when I first opened. It seems soon as lockdown was lifted, it went dead. Obviously, I'm going to get answers from stores that have 3 million parts that sell all day, every day. I did a whole video on how my sales were slow for May. They're continuing to be slow in June. I was kind of hopeful. I had a couple of really big orders at the beginning of the month, and then it's been very slow again. But as I said in my video, I think part of it, lockdown has been lifted. I think people are spending money on vacations or going out and about, just being out of their house. So I do believe that there's quite a bit of that going on. But for me, I also know that it's because I have not been putting parts into inventory. I took a full week off of work, and my goal was to really focus on Lego, and that did not really happen other than the sort I did that I showed in my last video. I didn't get in a lot actually into inventory. I have plenty sorted. Now it's just a matter of finding the time to get it into inventory. And that is the biggest thing, because if I have right around 100,000 parts in my store, if I can keep that level, I generally have 1 to 2 sales a day. If I have 115 or more, I can do 3 or 4 sales a day. But right now I'm sitting right about 90,000. So I'm getting 1 sale maybe every other day or so. Not good. And I know I need to get stuff into inventory. I tend to do a lot more inventory during the winter months because this is Montana and I'm not an outdoor winter sports person. I love the summer. I love being outside. I love hiking and spending time with family and doing barbecues. But this time of year, I'm busy with other stuff. So putting parts in inventory isn't my main goal right now. The answer to that is yes, I'm seeing slow sales. But like I said, it has more to do with me than the store. Okay, that was all the questions that I had pulled for this round of Food for Thought. I really enjoy doing these because it gets me thinking as well, and I'm very anxious to hear how other sellers deal with some of those questions, or as a buyer, how you deal with some of those questions. And I'm going to call that good for today. It is Father's Day as I'm filming this, so I'm going to be spending the day with my son and my grandsons to celebrate Father's Day. And of course they planned a barbecue, which wouldn't normally be a problem in Montana in June, but yeah, it's raining today. The 1 day out of 14 it's supposed to rain would be today. So I thought I would get this done so I could get it edited and uploaded, and I just want to tell everybody to have a happy Father's Day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.